Good afternoon, just about. So I'm going live today with Jill, or Jamjar Jill. So hopefully in a moment she will get the notification to say that I've gone online and can come and join me. So happy International Women's Day for all of you ladies out there. Let me know, is anyone celebrating in any way? Are you attending any events? Just trying to invite Jill to the live. It's hard doing all of these things, carrying on talking whilst you're trying to there we go, there's Jill coming in now. Hi Jill, success.
We did it.
We did it. Good afternoon. Yay for us. Success on International Women's Day.
Exactly. Excellent day for it, I think.
I think so too. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great, thank you. Yes.
So for anyone who's joined us and hasn't seen us online before, I am Sarah from Kitchen Tidbits, hosting today. I'm a family mealtimes mentor and I support parents mostly transforming mealtimes from stressful to stress-free. And Jill, would you like to just do a quick introduction?
Sure.
All the fingers in pies that you've got going on.
I've got lots of hats. So I am a twin mum. I live in central Bedfordshire. I'm an eco-influencer and I'm a virtual assistant and I'm a podcaster.
And how do you have the time?
I don't. Somehow I just spend my life juggling, really.
I'm doing very well indeed. So I invited Jill on to have a chat with me today just because I enjoy having a chat with Jill, really. But we have quite a lot in common, don't we, in terms of food, that love of food, but also in terms of eco, joining the eco fight. So I'm going to kick off with a question for you around eco tips, if that's okay, Jill.
Sure.
So when I work with clients on reducing food waste, it's about identifying some small changes that they can make, and once they're in the habit, choosing a couple more so that they're taking small and manageable steps towards their goal. And then also encouraging them to celebrate their successes along the way, celebrate that they've made the decision to start, you know, celebrating what it is they've chosen to do, that they're making those changes, and then when they're at that point, being able to choose more. What tips do you have for anyone starting out on an eco journey, because it can feel, you know, overwhelming and all-consuming?
I think it's like something which I really try and promote massively is conscious consumerism and mindful consumerism, because I think, you know, there's a lot to be said for the fact that if we all take a mindful moment before we make a purchase and we actually think about, you know, who's produced it, where's it come from, everything like that, then I think that would solve so much problems. I'm a massive advocate, and I think you're the same, Sarah, that for celebrating all the wins and for really focusing in on all the good things which people are doing. End of the day, you know, it can't all be down to the consumers, and I don't believe that it is all our fault. I think fundamentally for the big changes to happen, it needs to come from governmental level, it needs to come from the big corporates. But we can absolutely do our bit on the ground level, and we can teach our kids the right things, teaching them things like, you know, my boys know that there's different bins in the house. We have a food bin, we have a recycle bin. You know, when we're unpacking the food shopping, I ask them where it's coming from, I ask them how it's grown, and I make a point of highlighting that we buy organic when we can, we buy free range when we can. I started using the food bin actually after the boys were born, and I haven't looked back since doing that, and it's literally got us to the point, I mean, we're on a 2-week bin collection thing in central Bedfordshire. So we get main waste one week, and then recycling the next week. But, you know, this week it was our main bins and it wasn't full enough to put out. So that is like a massive win as far as I'm concerned. It literally is the case that the only things which really go in there are tissues and sanitary products now, because we've removed the food from it. So, you know, it's all about celebrating these little wins. It's looking at what you can do. You know, I absolutely love the profile Sustainability-ish. I don't know if you've come across her, but she always talks about going for the low-hanging fruit. I think especially as a busy mum, you know, we're all overwhelmed and the last thing we need is more guilt piled on, you know. So, yeah, I'll stop waffling.
And it is the case, isn't it, that, you know, we are only a small piece of the jigsaw, and actually, yes, we need government buy-in and we need the big corporates to be doing more, but that isn't to say that we can't do something and that what we do isn't going to make a change. You know, collectively we can make a big difference with small changes in
yeah, I think as well, specifically on the food side of things, it's understanding, and I do say to the boys, you know, we don't waste food in this house, you know, and without kind of giving them a massive guilty complex, because I know you'll know a lot more around that, and it's all about like positive messaging, but equally so it's understanding from this young age. I've got twin 5-year-olds, that understanding that it's not just a case of, yeah, sure, you can have your afters, you haven't eaten any of your mains, you know, it's kind of like, no, you have to start with your mains, and I want you to eat this bit and this bit, and sometimes it is a bit of a compromise, but, you know, it's really highlighting to them that they're lucky to have what they have, and educating. You know, I'm a massive advocate for education. Now, I was brought up by teachers, and I just think if we can really kind of get that message home of where food comes from, and also just getting them to understand how lucky they are to have the food they have in abundance like they do, and that might not be the case for the whole of their life, but yeah, I think that's really important messaging.
Absolutely, but without that guilt tripping that I certainly had about, you know, there's starving children in Africa. You know, there's a middle ground there as to how we can approach the subject. And the other thing I wanted to touch on as well with you was, you know, we can often have to pay a premium for eco products. Can the average person afford to be more eco?
I think, you know, what I try and do is do one swap at a time. And I think that's all you can try and do. And there are things which you can do in a cheaper way. You know, I have a goal. Obviously, we're only just entering March now, but I want to try and grow a bit more fruit and veg this year. So you can do that quite cheaply. It is really difficult. There is a massive green premium, and I don't think it's fair at all. No. But I think it's taking the wins where you can get the wins. You know, it's also celebrating those wins when you do have them, because there was a book which I quite often reference, which I read a long time ago now, and it's called Seven, and it's by Jen Hatmaker, who people probably haven't heard of in this country because she's American and she's a preacher's wife and stuff. But so she kind of does it. The book is based on like a biblical principle of doing 7 of less for 7 months. But actually, from the eco perspective, it's a fascinating book. And it's also interesting to me, though I'm not particularly religious myself, that, you know, that thread of having less makes you appreciate what you do have. And I think that's an important life lesson, you know, regardless of what your ideologies are in life. But she kind of goes through, and basically with the food month, she's literally allowed 7 items of food which she has to make into meals for that month. So it is fasting in a sense, but it's, you know, it's just what she learns from each one. And then she does it with consumerism as well. And what she found was, because she added the extra layer on to the consumerism month, she's only allowed to buy from 7 shops. And then each of those 7 shops needs to be ethical in some way, shape or form. And then she described something which really resonated with me of the multi-personality disorder of eco shopping, in that unfortunately the marketeers get hold of the concept and then they make a category for each one. So you have organic, you have free range, you have fair trade, you have pre-loved, you have all these different categories. And I think part of being like the conscious consumer really is actually going, well, at least I've ticked 1 box this time, you know, and it's not always possible to tick multiple boxes, but you just got to do the best you can with what you have. If there's an opportunity to buy eggs from a neighbour or from a local farm, do it. You know, that's generally a cheap way to buy eggs. Usually cheaper than buying your organic free range from the supermarket. So I think, you know, as long as you're trying to, wherever possible, tick a box where you can tick a box, I think you have to. You know, for example, with our milk, I want to support the milkman, so I get 1 pint of organic milk in a glass bottle a week, and that's not our entire milk consumption. I then get organic milk from the supermarket, and yes, it's in a plastic bottle, but I couldn't afford to have all of it in glass bottles. But I feel like making a small contribution, keeping that going, and it's making decisions like that as well.
Yeah, and I think as well, you know, if you consider, you know, don't write it off if it's an eco product and it seems on the face of it expensive, because actually some of these products are reusable and have got a long lifespan in them and can over time save you money on throwaway items. So I think it really does is worth having some research and an investigation and doing the maths a bit with it.
And it's tackling one thing at a time, you know, aim for doing 1 swap a month. It's really still makes a big difference. I do quite a lot of bulk buying now, like our toilet rolls I get from Faith in Nature, I think they're called. No, they're not Faith in Nature. I'll find the link and I'll put it out. But but basically, you know, that was the whole thing in itself, because when I mean, I thank Who Gives a Crap for giving a crap in the first place. However, once I researched it further, I found out that Who Gives a Crap is actually generally shipped from Australia, because it was an Australian company. Yeah, so then I kind of started there. And then the other thing which kind of irked me a little bit was, okay, great, you're getting rid of the plastic packaging, but do we really need paper around every single toilet roll if we're not running a B&B?
It's quite good for wrapping paper, right?
It's very pretty wrapping paper. It looks very nice on Instagram, but is it necessary? And it's questioning these things as well. So I actually ended up with you know, you can learn a lot from the thrifty side of things as well, like the catering industry, how hotels have been doing it for years. So I bulk buy, and it comes in a big cardboard box and the toilet rolls are all loose. But that's kind of like a month and a half supply. And that works out cheaper, and it's, you know, made in the UK. So, and equally so, I didn't get on with, you know, your solid soap bars. So I bulk buy from the Scottish Fine Soaps Company a 5-litre bottle, which yes cost me 30 quid, but it's hair wash and body wash and hand soap for the entire year for the entire family.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a plastic bottle, but it's one bottle over the whole
Mm.
year. And then actually, you know, one of the things that I talk about, certainly with food, but can be taken elsewhere, is making the most of what you're buying when you are buying it. So, you know, what can you reuse that bottle for before it ends up in the recycling?
Absolutely.
You know, can
And
you
you can
use
quite
it in your
often find
garden as a propagator, or you know, whatever it might
yeah.
be.
Yeah, I mean, there's actually, I'm going to forget them all now, but I mean, you've got the fundamental reduce, reuse, recycle, but there's about 7 of them now. I can't actually remember what all the different R's are. I should do. But, you know, it's just thinking outside of the box, as you rightly say. So, what can I use this for in different ways? And those bulk buy, you know, plastic containers, I probably could go and refill that somewhere. I haven't investigated that next level yet. But yeah, it's using it wherever you can. End of the day, I'm still reducing my plastic waste by not buying bottle after bottle after bottle throughout the course of the year. So that's my contribution, and I'm very much pro adapting to your family, to your skin type, to, you know, for me, you know, those solid soap bars didn't work. They dried out my skin, and so they weren't for me. But you know,
absolutely,
it's
you've got to do what works for you. Otherwise, you're not going to stick with it. And then, you know, and the whole point is it's a new habit that you pick up that you can stick with, so that it is sustainable and going. Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
So I like to ask people when I talk to them, do you meal plan? Jill, do you meal plan?
I do. And some weeks I'm better than other weeks, but I'm really trying to get on it this year. I do use Google Calendar for everything in my life. And I did set up a separate calendar, which is shared with my husband as well. So it's in there. And if I have links to the recipe and stuff like that when I'm being organised, and I definitely do find it saves money and waste when we do meal plan. You know, it's something which I try and do as well. Is I try. It is helpful. You know, I've got 2 5-year-olds and a husband now, so I'll ask them for 3 meal ideas. So it's about getting your family involved as well and saying, you know, hey, give me some suggestions this week, because sometimes you can feel, as the person who's looking after all that, like it is an overwhelming task to try and come up with new meals.
Burden, isn't it? Yeah.
And then equally, there's certain things like it's okay to maybe a couple of times a week have the same thing. Like Thursday nights is swimming nights, so we have pizza because it's easy, you know, and that's fine. And it's that whole piece of not beating yourself up. It's finding it, and that gives me comfort. I know it sounds mad, but it gives me a mind. I know Thursday's covered.
Yeah, bonus.
You know, Meatless Monday. Meatless Monday is generally beans on toast for the boys and something like more interesting vegetarian for mummy. You know, again, you know, those 2 days are covered, and then the rest. You know, it's finding all the gaps, and usually it's making the time as well to look through your freezer, look through your cupboards, see what you already have in, see what you can make of what you already have in. I am, you know, I do have a thing where I feel so much more comfortable when I've got food in the cupboards. So I do generally have things which I can make things into. You know, the bulk buying of staples, like things like flour, things like dried pasta, basically all your store cupboard essentials, you know, that is, you know, being eco as well. Is to try and buy those in bulk because they don't actually go off. And yeah, I'm a little bit like, I might get into trouble here, but I'm a bit skeptical of when they do have a best before because I'm like, yeah, I don't know, that's not going to go off in the next year, that's fine. You know.
Absolutely.
There's a reason why you have perishables and non-perishables. You know, I think we need to get back to the old school attitude to that, and sometimes
use your senses. Absolutely, yeah. Use your senses. And yeah, I mean, I buy on those things as well, and it's good to have staples in the store cupboard. You know, you might have a change of plan. It makes it easy to deal with. You know, it means you can find a meal when seemingly there's nothing to eat. You don't have to then resort to a takeaway, which is quite often seen as the easy option or the quick option, and not necessarily true. But yeah, making friends with your freezer as well. Yeah, absolutely. And making friends with your freezer.
Yes, 100%. And you know, I'm someone who, you know, whenever someone does have a glut of stuff, give it over. I'm going to make chutney. I'm going to make marinara sauce. You know, I will look that up. And like the marinara sauce, for example, which I found, which is an Ina Gardner one, you know, Barefoot Contessa. Do you follow her?
Yeah.
And you know, every time, because someone always in the family or friends has a glut of tomatoes each year, because everyone always plants too many tomato plants, and then they're like, what do we do with all these tomatoes? It's the most brilliant thing. It keeps in the freezer in jam jars, and I literally make it in bulk and fill up like 10 jam jars, and then it's always in the freezer. And then literally it just takes a pack of sausage meat, a handful of like fennel seeds, and some dried pasta, and it's a delicious meal. And I know what's in it all the way through. There's absolutely like nothing, and it freezes well when you've made it as well. You can freeze it, the pasta and the sauce and the sausages, you know, so it's that side.
Brilliant. We've got a great WhatsApp group for our street. And there's always, I've got too much of this, or this came in my veg box and I can't face any more of it. And it's great. We can all just pick up everybody's bits.
That's a great idea.
Sharing and making sure that nothing's going to waste. So yeah, make use of your neighbours as well.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. That's a concept which sort of I came across. Have you read India Nights, the thrift book?
Yes.
I love that book. It's such a great book, but it does talk about, you know, if you're going for the more luxurious things in life, like vegetable boxes, if you're in community with your neighbours, you could, as you say, you can share the contents. You know, my absolute go-to as well is BBC Good Food. I love how you can just type in an ingredient and come up with something really interesting, really different, something that you haven't thought of before. I went for just the sample box from Oddbox the other day, and I had a pumpkin, and I was like, oh, what can I do with a pumpkin? I cooked a new recipe. I'm going to post about it this week, which was like completely not what I would think to do with the pumpkin at all, but it was a pumpkin, prawn and coconut stew. And it was like Asian flavours, and it was absolutely delicious. And it was like a can of coconut milk and like stock, which I used like the Marigold stock for, and yeah, and then just sort of cook the potatoes and that, and prawns at the end. And it was so like nurturing. It was one of those, like, it felt like chicken soup, you know. It was really lovely, but I wouldn't have ever thought of putting those flavors together. So I think it's also about, you know, keeping your mind open. And for example, for me, I don't like chilies. I don't get on with chilies. But you can easily take out chilies from the recipe if you're not sure. And it's not scaring yourself off of something because it's got chilies in, for example. Just substitute. And I think as you start to learn food, I think my process of doing Meatless Mondays taught me so much more about flavours than I ever knew before. Yeah, because it's just about making vegetables taste more interesting. And so I kind of learned about all the spices through that process. So I'd recommend people doing that, you know, for that reason, as well as, I mean, I'll let you go away and watch the TED Talk, but it blows my mind how much that helps the environment just one day a week. If you can do one day a week of meatless,
yeah,
it really does. But it's
even just cutting back your meat the rest of the time, you know, and bulking out with vegetables or pulses, you know, even that, you know, if you're not in a position, or you don't feel comfortable doing that straight away, then you cut back what you're doing and build up to it.
There's so many things you can do like that, like putting lentils in your bolognese and things like that. And you know, I mean, when I grew up, you know, I grew up in the 80s, born in 1983, and it was very much that the international cookery stuff was only just phasing in my childhood. And I remember my mum's version of bolognese, bless her, was like minced can of Dolmio on top, you know, that was it. Whereas if I think about like my bolognese now, like I literally put every vegetable in the fridge in it to bulk it out, and then it will like literally easily go 6 meals, you know, if not more than. It just keeps us going and going and going. So
fantastic. Well, it's been great talking to you, Jill. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah,
Please do give Jill a follow for lots of tips, and yeah, great to see everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Take care. Nice to see you. Bye.